The moment I realized my life didn't belong to me, I was standing in my own kitchen. Not in a stranger's house. Not in a dream. In the place I had lived for over 20 years. My name is Thomas. I'm 56 years old, married, financially stable, and respected by people who think they know me. From the outside, my life looks complete. From the inside, it feels borrowed. I was making coffee when it happened. The familiar routine. Same mug. Same window. Same silence. I looked at my reflection in the microwave door and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Disconnection. The man staring back at me wasn't angry. He wasn't sad. He was unfamiliar. Like someone I had been pretending to be for so long that I forgot who I was before. My entire life had been built on responsibility. I was the oldest son. The reliable one. The good example. My parents didn't talk about dreams. They talked about duty. Do what makes sense, my father used to say. Not what feels good. So I followed the plan. I studied what promised security, not what interested me. I dated women who looked respectable, not women who excited me. I married someone who felt right, not someone who felt real. My wife is kind. Practical. Calm. We never fought much. We also never talked deeply. Our relationship was efficient. And efficiency is not the same as connection. We had children. I worked long hours. I paid for everything. I showed up for birthdays and school meetings. I did all the things a good man is supposed to do. But no one ever asked if I felt alive. And I never asked myself. Years passed quietly. Not dramatically. Just, invisibly. One day, my youngest son moved out. Another life stage completed. Another responsibility fulfilled. The house became quieter. Not peaceful. Empty. That's when I started noticing the silence. Not the normal silence of a calm home. The silence of something missing. My wife watched television in the evenings. I scrolled through my phone. We shared space, not presence. Two people aging in parallel. One night, she asked, "Are you happy?" The question felt like a foreign language. "I'm fine," I said. Fine is the safest answer. Fine doesn't require honesty. Weeks later, I found an old box in the attic. Inside were notebooks from my 20s. Drawings. Half-written poems. Letters I never sent. I used to write. Not professionally. Not for attention. For myself. Back then, I had opinions. Curiosity. Emotional depth. I believed my thoughts mattered. Reading my old words felt like meeting a stranger who knew me better than anyone in my present life. That version of me wanted to travel. Create. Feel intensely. Live imperfectly. This version of me wanted stability. And stability had slowly erased everything else. I sat on the attic floor, holding a notebook, feeling grief for a life I never lived. Not because it was impossible. Because I never chose it. Every decision I had made was logical. Responsible. Safe. And safety, when chosen too often, becomes a cage. My parents had taught me how to survive. They never taught me how to feel. I realized something uncomfortable. My life wasn't bad. It was empty. Empty of desire. Empty of risk. Empty of personal meaning. I had become a background character in my own story. A supporting role in a life built for other people's expectations. I went downstairs and looked at the family photos on the wall. Smiles. Holidays. Achievements. But none of them showed who I really was. They showed what I provided. Not what I felt. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was anxious. Because I was awake for the first time in decades. I asked myself a simple question: if no one expected anything from me, who would I be? The answer terrified me. I didn't know. I had spent so many years being needed that I forgot how to be wanted. My identity was built on usefulness, not authenticity. And usefulness has no soul. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had changed. Meetings, emails, polite conversations. But inside, something had cracked. Not broken. Opened. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of failure. I was afraid of continuing to live a life that didn't belong to me. I wasn't depressed. I was displaced. Living in a version of myself that made sense to everyone else, but felt wrong to me. That's when I understood the real tragedy. I didn't lose my life. I gave it away. Slowly. Willingly. Responsibly. And now, at 56, I was standing in a life that looked perfect. And felt empty. Because perfection, without authenticity, is just another form of silence. After that night in the attic, something inside me refused to go back to sleep. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just steadily. Every morning, I woke up with the same routine, but it no longer felt neutral. It felt borrowed. Like I was wearing someone else's clothes, familiar, but not mine. At work, people praised my reliability. At home, my wife thanked me for being supportive. My children called me a good father. All of it was true. And none of it felt like me. I started noticing how little of my life involved actual choice. Most of my days were reactions to schedules, responsibilities, expectations. I wasn't living forward. I was responding backward. One evening, I tried to talk to my wife. Not about logistics. Not about bills. About feelings. I feel like I've lived someone else's life, I said quietly. She looked at me with polite confusion. What do you mean, she asked. I didn't know how to explain something I had never practiced feeling. I don't know who I am without responsibility, I said. She smiled gently. Not cruelly. You're a husband. A father. A provider. That's who you are. Her answer wasn't wrong. It just wasn't complete. Those were my roles. Not my identity. That night, I realized something painful. The people in my life didn't know me. They knew what I did for them. And I had trained them to see only that. I started taking long walks after work, alone, without direction, not to escape, to listen. To my thoughts. To my regrets. To the quiet parts of myself I had ignored for decades. I asked questions I had avoided. What do I enjoy when no one is watching? What excites me without approval? What hurts because I never tried? The answers were simple. I liked writing. I liked silence. I liked being unknown. I didn't need applause. I needed authenticity. One evening, I took out one of my old notebooks and started writing again. Not poems. Not dreams. Confessions. I was afraid of wanting more. I chose safety over curiosity. I lived for expectations, not for meaning. The words didn't feel dramatic. They felt accurate. And accuracy hurt more than imagination. At work, I started declining extra projects. Not because I was lazy. Because I was tired of pretending productivity was purpose. Colleagues looked surprised. My manager raised an eyebrow. You're usually so dependable, he said. Dependable. Another word for predictable. At home, my wife noticed I was quieter. Is something wrong, she asked. No, I replied. Something was finally right. But right didn't look comfortable. It looked uncertain. One weekend, I drove to the coast alone. No family. No explanation. Just distance. I walked along the shore, watching waves erase footprints. It felt familiar. Like the life I never chose. I sat on a rock and whispered, what would I have been if I wasn't afraid? No answer came. But the silence felt honest. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to be useful. I was trying to be real. When I returned home, nothing had changed. Same house. Same routine. Same expectations. But I had changed. Not dramatically. Internally. I started seeing my life as a structure built for stability, not for meaning. A house without windows. Safe, but closed. My children visited sometimes. They talked about their lives, their plans, their futures. I listened. And realized I had never talked about mine. Because I never had one that felt like mine. I had only had obligations. One night, my son asked, "Dad, what did you want to be when you were young?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I don't remember, I said. That wasn't entirely true. I remembered. I just hadn't lived it. Later that night, I stared at the ceiling, thinking about how easy it is to lose yourself when everyone needs something from you. Responsibility is heavy. But avoidance is heavier. I hadn't avoided responsibility. I had avoided myself. And that avoidance had shaped my entire life. I wasn't angry. I was grieving. Grieving the version of me that never existed because I was too afraid to choose him. I didn't hate my family. I didn't hate my job. I didn't hate my life. I just realized it wasn't mine. It belonged to duty. To expectations. To survival. And survival, without meaning, feels like slow disappearance. I wasn't invisible to others. I was invisible to myself. And that, more than anything, felt like loss. Not dramatic loss. Quiet loss, the kind that doesn't scream. The kind that waits. The strangest part wasn't realizing my life wasn't mine. The strangest part was accepting that it might be too late to change it completely. Not too late to feel. Not too late to understand. But too late to rewrite the foundations. Some lives are built on choice. Mine was built on compliance. And structures built on compliance don't collapse easily. One evening, I sat alone in the living room while my wife watched television in the bedroom. The house was quiet in the way only long-term relationships become quiet. Not tense. Not broken. Just distant. I didn't feel angry toward her. She had never taken my identity from me. I had offered it willingly. I had chosen to be useful instead of curious. Reliable instead of honest. Stable instead of alive. And no one had forced me to make those choices. I had made them because they felt safe. Safety had shaped my entire existence. Safety doesn't hurt. Safety doesn't risk. Safety doesn't transform. It preserves. And preservation slowly turns into stagnation. That night, I opened my old notebook again and wrote something new. I don't know how to start over. But I know how to stop pretending. The words didn't feel revolutionary. They felt real. The next day, I did something small. I told my manager I wanted to reduce my workload. Not to retire. Not to escape. Just to breathe. He looked confused. "You've always been so committed," he said. "Commitment is easy when you don't question it." I was done with unexamined loyalty. At home, I told my wife I needed more emotional space, not distance, but honesty. "I feel like I've lived a life designed for everyone else," I said. She didn't argue. She just looked at me quietly. "I thought that was what you wanted," she replied. So did I. Until I realized wanting something and accepting something are not the same. Our marriage didn't end. It changed shape. We talked more. We shared more silence. We stopped pretending everything was fine. And fine, I learned, is not the same as fulfilled. Some conversations were uncomfortable. Some were quiet. Some led nowhere. But they were real. And real felt better than efficient. I started writing every morning. Not for publication. Not for validation. For clarity. I wrote about regret. About fear. About the strange grief of realizing you were never fully present in your own life. The pages didn't fix me. They revealed me. And revelation is the first step toward ownership. I didn't suddenly become a different man. I became an aware one. Awareness doesn't make life easier. It makes it honest. I stopped chasing approval. I stopped measuring my worth by usefulness. I stopped performing stability. Instead, I started choosing presence. Presence in conversations. Presence in silence. Presence in my own thoughts. My children noticed something was different. You seem calmer, my daughter said one day. I'm just listening more, I replied. Not to her. To myself. I finally understood something important. My life wasn't stolen from me. It was shaped by fear. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of choosing wrong. Fear of wanting more. And fear, when followed long enough, becomes identity. But identity isn't permanent. It's practiced. So I practiced something new. Honesty. Not dramatic honesty. Not destructive honesty. Quiet honesty. The kind that doesn't demand change from the world. Only from yourself. I didn't leave my family. I didn't abandon my responsibilities. I didn't chase a fantasy version of my youth. I did something harder. I stayed. And I stayed differently. Not as a role. Not as a function. As a person. Some nights, regret still sits with me. You lost time, it whispers. And I answer calmly. Yes. But I didn't lose awareness. Awareness is not a second chance. It's a final one. Not to restart your life. To finally live it. I want to become extraordinary. I want to rewrite my past. I want to escape my age. But I will exist in my own story now. Not as a background character. Not as a responsibility. Not as an obligation. As myself. And that, after a lifetime of living for others, feels like the quietest kind of freedom. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just real.